Hi, my name is Vivek Tiwary. I'm author of The Fifth Beatle, and you're watching In the Loop magazine.
Oh, I'm Mark. I'm Mark Lapidos. Hi there. I'm the one who started all this 42 years ago when I went to John Lennon with my idea about a Beatles fan celebration. Told him the whole idea, and he said, I'm all for it, I'm a Beatles fan too. Simple as that. And yet not so simple.
Exactly, and it's kind of gotten bigger and bigger as the years have gone on.
It's grown, it's ups and downs, it's all over the place, depending on what Beatle things are going on in the world. When the anthology came out, there was a bigger interest. So But we get fans here from 32 states, from Sweden, from England, from Canada, Hong Kong, Philippines. I saw some people from the Philippines.
What's the allure of having it here in the Chicago area all this time?
The allure, Chicago's a great city. It's a wonderful city, and it's in the summer, so people come from all over the country, 32 states, and they take their summer vacations around. So maybe they go to the Dells, or they go to Lake Michigan, or they do something else after this. It's a wonderful city, so people love it.
And it's actually grown now for you to become more of a family affair. Your children are involved in it. What are their
daughters are part of the production, and it's great to have them with us.
So they've taken on a lot of sort of responsibility. Have you been able to kick back and enjoy anything?
They still have their own lives, so they, for the shows themselves, they're always here. So, but otherwise, they help. Jessica designs the program book and the shirt. Jessica and Carol, my wife. So they're the artists of the family. I'm not the artist of the family. I'm the guy who gets all the things done and details and stuff, make sure things go smoothly and stuff like that.
When would you say is the last time you've actually sort of felt like you were able to enjoy the fest itself? You mentioned that you don't get a chance to do that too often.
I saw Peter Asher and Albert Lee. I saw about 20 minutes of them. Yesterday, I saw Klaus for about 25 minutes today. I saw Klaus's entire talk with Peter Asher. Now that's historic. Peter Asher is one of our guests this weekend, and Klaus Voormann. They're both legendary, and yet they used to work together at Apple and different projects. And it was great to hear Peter interviewing him. He came from a different space as somebody who knows him. So it was really great. One of the great moments in Fest history was this weekend.
And that's always been like kind of the thing, is to try and get interesting interactions between the guests themselves.
Well, coming up in a few minutes is a musicians forum that Peter also volunteered to head this year. It's usually Mark Hudson's detail, but sure, he's going to be talking about the roots of rock and roll and how the Beatles got the music and where they got it from, with Billy J. Kramer, with Joey Molland from Badfinger, with Albert Lee, and two Americans, Glenn Burtnick in our band Liverpool, who used to be in Styx, and Mark Hudson, the one and only. So we got British point of view and Americans. So that starts soon. So
yeah, and you have found that throughout the years, it's just become this big community of people that just love to come back and come back.
It's like Thanksgiving without the arguing.
Yeah. Without the sleeping after the turkey.
Right, there you go. Who gets the turkey leg?
Yeah.
No, but it's like a family reunion every year. We all have this common love for the Beatles. So when you talk to somebody here and you talk about a track on Ram or something, and everybody knows what you're talking about. If you talk about someone outside it, they never heard of it. Oh yeah, I know who Paul McCartney is. He was in the Beatles. Well, that was 46 years ago since they last recorded. So but fans, when Liverpool played, Liverpool's the best tribute band in the world. They've been with us for 37 years. And if they weren't the best, the hardcore fans would not like them so much. But they even say it on the stage, right? It's so nice to pick any Beatles song and everyone will know it. So they don't have to do all the greatest hits, the 100 greatest hits. They can go deeper than that. But they did last night, they did side one of Revolver in honor of its 50th anniversary. And Love You Too is just tabla and sitar. Chris on drums played the tabla, and John the lead guitarist played the sitar, and it was fantastic, really. And tonight's part 2, side 2.
You must find it very satisfying after so many years of doing it to keep seeing newer people. I mean, that's kind of like the strangeness
we
of
get
it.
new people every year.
Yeah, and the younger,
young
and
people.
yeah, people
That's we have the new Apple Jam stage we started. Excuse me, we started it last year. My girls, with their idea, and it's working. So I just saw one group, they just performed note for note Ram album, the Ram album. It's just fabulous.
So it's like a rediscovery when you come in when you come into these fests of like you have 8-year-olds coming in and enjoying it, and their parents or grandparents coming in. So that's been probably the most enjoyable thing for you is to come back year after year and saying, hey, it's a new influx of people.
Just about an hour ago, this guy came in and said, Mark, I'm bringing my grandchildren for the first time. Like, I don't know, maybe 4 and 7 looked like. And his mother was saying they love Beatle music and listening in the car. And said, let me guess, will they listen to Yellow Submarine? And yes, they were. So it's contagious. So we're successfully passing this greatest music of all time on to the next generation and the next generation. So that's important because the music is the thing. That's exactly what John said in '79. He sent a message to the fest. Tell the fans the music was the thing. That's it. That's what he said.
And that must have been very satisfying for you, to be able to be able to carry that forward. Because when you first thought of it, it mustn't have been something that you can now look back on and say, I can't believe it started off like this and it's grown.
Well, the first show made the cover of Rolling Stone, so it started out pretty big. We had to turn people away, I think. So.
Seriously?
Yeah.
It was that huge.
It was huge. I mean, it was all over the newspapers, and everybody had stories on it. It was a great show. It wasn't like anything like here, though.
But it was like, at the time, it was like a new sort of phenomenon for you to become involved with something that, that was able to grow.
Not just being involved with it, but creating it and coming up with something, a brand new concept that hadn't been done before. And here I am, 42 years later, still doing it.
Yeah. Does that kind of blow your mind a little bit sometimes?
Doing anything for 42 years.
Is this your first time at the fest, or have you come and participated in?
I've done the fest before.
And have you done other festivals? Like, have you done other regions, New York or Los Angeles?
I've done New York. I've done California. I think I did it in Vegas once.
And how was that going there? How do you compare it to coming into Chicago?
To me, it's like when the fest is I don't object to it, but it's a lot of work. You meet a lot of people. You have a lot to do. There's the part where you do your show. There's a part where they do interviews, all sorts of things. And a lot of times you don't get a chance to see a lot of places. Even like I'm from England originally, and even there are cities and towns that, it's only like a few years ago I saw Beth. I've played there millions of times, but I had some time. I thought I had a day off. I thought I want to go and see the place.
So you feel like sometimes it's a bit of a bubble when you come in and see kind of like just a thing that you're doing. You don't get to enjoy.
No, because I enjoy what I do. It's I enjoy it's my job.
To come out here and see all the fans.
To meet people, people have followed you for many years and bought your records and come to your shows, and it's the right thing to do.
And do you think that a lot of these people here are like friends of yours that you just kind of get
it's like
to
a
see?
family.
Yeah, exactly. You get to see them because of the Beatles. There's that connection.
Yes, and it might be you'll do one and you don't do it for a year or two, and people will come back and see you. It's nice to see.
Did you come directly in from home from England? Are you living there?
No, I live in New York, and I came from New York.
Do you go back to?
I was there, I did a tour there, which I do from time to time.
So just briefly about your book, it's kind of interesting, this photo actually that I'm looking at right here on the front cover. It's they've got the mop top look going, but were you ever encouraged to go and sort of emulate the look of them
No.
everything?
No.
You were just like, this is how Billy Joe Griffith
I always thought that, like, I wanted to be me. I wasn't being funny.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Epstein used to tell me, "What are you doing getting your hair cut?" And I'd say, "I'm not a Beatle, man.
You're yourself.
I'm Billy. That's it."
So he was kind of like not. It wouldn't be like he would be trying to say you have to be them. But
No.
Yeah, you could just be yourself.
And I'll be honest with you, I've always sort of liked fashion and I've liked clothes, and I wasn't into sort of buying Beatles suits and collarless jackets.
Mm-hmm.
I used to buy a lot of cool stuff. I thought,
Back then,
yes.
Back then, in the day and everything.
In the early days, I went to the same tailor, but a lot of people in show business went to the guy Dougie Millie's.
Yes, I remember. I've read about that.
And I got to a point where I went, I don't really like what he makes, and I went somewhere else.
Yeah.
I used a lot of different people,
Mm-hmm. So for your time here now in Chicago, you're doing some sets with people. You're playing some music upstairs as well.
I played yesterday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
I have a great band, really tremendous band, and we did a lot of new stuff from my album. And it's great that people have found that the Beatles fans have accepted it, because it's very weird with making records, because I've seen artists where they do a lot of new stuff and people only want to hear the old stuff,
mm-hmm.
and it's difficult to get new stuff across, but it's been very well accepted, which has pleased me.
Yeah, especially in this time and era, it's not just nostalgia.
I do the old stuff,
mm-hmm.
but I introduce some new stuff,
mm-hmm.
and I'm in the middle of doing more new stuff, because it's like, for many years I didn't think about it, and I didn't do it, and I started again, and I got the bug, and it's what I like to do.
Yeah, because a lot of people say, well, you don't have to, you are who you are, and why are you doing this, now or at this age? And even Paul has said, that's just a number, it doesn't...
I always say to people, it's a thing, I've always loved what I do. Not many people get a chance to have a job that they love. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I like doing what I do, and it's great to have a job that you're being paid for doing something that you love to do. And I still have a lot of passion. I like to record. I like to travel.
Mm-hmm.
I like to, my doctor tells me I'm crazy, I went to England, we did like 45 concerts in 50 days, which
can be quite a haul, in any occasion, but that's what you like to do.
Yes.
That's what drives you.
Yeah, and, I still put as much as into it as when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And if I didn't feel like that, I wouldn't do it.
How many times have you been here?
You know what? I've been here so many times, I don't remember. All I know is I'm going to keep coming back until they throw me out.
All right, until Mark says you're done.
You're done.
You're done.
But you know what the weird thing is? If you've seen the live shows, what ends up happening is I start playing and I don't want to leave. And then I look over at the side of the stage and I see Lapidos point. Did I say penis?
I think you might have had an emphasis on the last
On the is?
Yeah.
He pointed at me like, get off stage. And I think, not going to get me out of here now. And I keep going till they start playing Hey Jude.
I gotta tell you though, Mark was very happy with the way that you've been conducting yourself.
No,
Yes,
I know.
You've had so much energy that yes, they are having a problem getting you off the stage.
Yes, I know.
They are.
I apologize, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying with him.
You're going to stay with him. He's going to stay this color too as well.
Yes, at least this summer.
Yeah. He's not going to take it.
Every year, like at Halloween, I do black and orange.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas, red and green. One time I tried to do a Hanukkah bush for my Jewish friends, but I looked like a gay zebra, so it didn't kind of.
That didn't go over so
It
well.
wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't so
Nobody
good.
made the connection.
They were throwing yarmulkes at me. What
yeah,
can I do?
does not work.
But now I just keep it rainbow-esque.
I think that's the way that they can find you if like the lights go out here.
I can't hide from the cops.
Okay.
It's like I made out with a clown. See you later.
Peace and love.
Yeah, well, what happened was the powers that be at Apple started harassing the Beatle Fest. And I wrote to our George and I said, I wish they would stop doing that because this is such a wonderful thing. It's like a great big family reunion every year. And not only is it a good family reunion for all of the Beatle fans to get together, but it's a way to keep the Beatles, the Beatle message alive. And it's certainly not doing any harm in the world, except maybe there might be a little bit of money being generated that isn't actually going into the widow's pockets. And so, anyway, I got a letter back from a certain female member of the group, and I just said something about they were mad at me for coming to these. And so in order to keep peace in the family, I stopped coming. But last year I said, this is ridiculous. I belong with these people. I've always, my mum and dad, as you see in the picture on that thing there, on that CD, they answered thousands and thousands of fan letters, and many times they would sign themselves "Love from Mum and Dad Harrison." So they kind of started the whole idea that they were the mum and dad of the Beatle family. And so now that they're no longer here, I'm the mum of the Beatle family. So I said, I've got to keep going to my family reunions. And now that Tory is, older, he's finally accepted the fact that he's got a Beatle as a relative. To begin with, and when he was like 9 years old, when he first came, he used to be kind of wanted to back away because people kept saying, "Do you play a guitar?" And they were kind of wanting to put him into George's shoes, and he was saying, "No, I don't want to be looked at that way." So now that he's started coming back, he has his own persona, and he's doing kind of little silly magic tricks and stuff like that. So he's establishing his own Tory, and he's a great nephew of George, and he says emphasis on the word great. So
I've read several things where your mom really took it upon herself.
Yeah.
One of the few parental units,
Yeah.
so to speak, in the Beatles,
Yeah.
in the immediate Beatles family.
Yeah.
She really encouraged your brother.
Well, I talk about that in my book too, about how I talk about the Harrison hug. That George, the last time I saw him before he died, when he hugged me, we always used to hug when we got back together. And this one time he said, "Pass it on." So I started, whenever I would hug people, I would say, "Pass it on." And I was talking about the Harrison hug. But then I said also in my book that the Harrison hug really started many, many years before that, because Mum and Dad were basically giving a kind of a virtual Harrison hug to everybody they came in contact with by answering all the mail and taking people that came to the house, taking them in, giving them a cup of tea and a sandwich or something, So their whole personalities exuded the whole idea of the hug, So
I guess I would say that because it feels like since you've been here mostly in the United States for so many years, that did you get a chance to make frequent trips back home to see your parents and George when he was there?
Occasionally, yeah. But they came over to see me too. Mm-hmm. But I came here in '63,
Right.
and so I was actually running around trying to promote the Beatles here in '63. But as I explained with the title of my book, it's called My Kid Brothers Band, because back then if I'd said the word Beatles, people would have thought I was an exterminating company or something, you know.
They didn't know, like, who
Yeah,
is this? Who is this?
nobody would have heard of it, you know.
Were you actually at home, like in your home, when you saw them for the first time on the Ed Sullivan Show?
I was
Were you-
with them.
Oh, you were with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you in the theater with them that
Yeah,
day? You were in the theater.
I was
How-
in the hotel with them.
Yeah.
I was having to look after George because he had a strep throat.
Right, he was very, very sick from what
Yeah,
I remember.
yeah,
so
yeah.
that experience must have just been, you can't even begin to explain probably when you were in
Well,
the
it's
theater.
just the way, and I talk about this in the book, the way parents brought us up, that as you go through life, there are challenges, and you just take them in your stride and do what you have to do to get through them. So, you know, that's the way we've looked in everything. You know? It's just part of life, and you do the best you can, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of Brian's personal life and who he was as a person definitely influenced his ability to manage the Beatles as successfully as he did and to have that kind of vision for them. You know, before he was working at his parents' record store, he tried fashion designing. So clothing, packaging, presentation, art, these were very important things to Brian. At the record store, he very often picked pop hits for the young people in the store, but he didn't love pop music personally. He had good ears, but he listened to jazz and classical. He believed that great composers were artists, and he often compared the Beatles to the classical composers that he loved. And he was gay. And I believe, quite frankly, that his homosexuality allowed him to have a certain vision for the band that a heterosexual male might not have had. You know, I think because of his homosexuality, he was able to see how packaged and presented in the right way, the Beatles would be attractive to girls, to boys, to parents, to grandparents, to all age groups and demographics and sexes. And I think that was an intrinsic part of his vision for the band. So I think there are a lot of elements of who Brian was as a person. And certainly, you know, as a gay man, that at a time where it was against the law, he had to literally hide his own love away, to use a Beatles lyric. And I think the idea of dedicating himself to helping this band spread a great message of love around the world. All you need is love, she loves you, lovely Rita. You know, that was very powerful for him because he knew that he otherwise had to hide his own love away. So this was his opportunity through the Beatles to vicariously spread some love. So I think there's a lot of elements of who Brian was as a person that really tie into his successful vision and management for the band, so that another guy couldn't have done it. He was special, and that's why another reason why he was the Fifth Beatle. He was another one of those stars that aligned to make the Beatles who they were.
I mean, in your own mind, would you say the Beatles would have not become who they were if it wasn't for Brian? I guess the
there's
thing
no
is
question
that
about
had
it.
to happen.
In my mind, there's no question about it. You know,
They had to happen.
They were talented musicians. They would have been. They might have been one of the most beloved bands in Liverpool. But I think it's unlikely anyone outside of Liverpool would have ever heard of the Beatles if it wasn't for Brian. I really believe that.
And it is true that when they first saw Brian, they really did think he was too posh for themselves. They just thought, is that kind of how it was?
My understanding is when they first saw him, they did think those things, but that was considered impressive. They were like, we want a manager who's a little posher than us and who drives a nice car, and you know that's the kind of guy you want managing us. That may not be the kind of guy you want to share a beer or a scotch and coke with at the bar, but that is the kind of guy you want guiding your career. You know, I think they were impressed by that.
Yeah, I think they had several people that had tried
That's
to
right.
do that.
A number of people, for
Yeah,
sure.
and it didn't seem to work out. There was something about Brian, the way that he decided to approach them, to say what his vision was for what he saw that they could
And
do.
I try to capture that in both the graphic novel and the television miniseries that we have coming in the pilot script that I wrote, to capture how impressed they were by his vision for them and his determination for them and his love, really. You know, he was very paternal with the Beatles. He nurtured them, he protected them, he cared for them, and I think they got a sense of that from the very beginning, that this was the kind of manager he was going to be.
Yeah. Can you explain just a little bit about, now we've got the book.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know you've been talking about what's happening now that's kind of making your world bigger. So if you could just explain, I know you probably explained it a million times.
That's okay.
But,
no.
Yeah.
So the Fifth Beatle, you know, it's currently a graphic novel based on the life of Brian Epstein. I wrote the graphic novel. and we are currently expanding that into a television miniseries. It's going to be a 6-hour miniseries, 6 one-hour episodes. I'm very proud to say that I'm writing the teleplays for that, and I'm also one of the executive producers, so I very much have my hand in the direction and the vision for how that show is going to unfold. I finished writing the pilot script, which I've been very honored and happy to have shared with the Fest for Beatles fans this weekend, the first time I've ever read the entire script to the public. So literally it's the first time anyone outside of our inner circle of producers has heard it, and it went over extremely well, so that's great. And the next steps is we are putting creative attachments together. I'd encourage any of your listeners or your readers to go to our website and sign our mailing list at fifthbeatle.com, or follow us on Twitter at Fifth Beatle, or on Facebook at the Fifth Beatle, because in the coming months I suspect we're going to be announcing our director, our cast, and possibly shortly after that our network. And I'm just very, very excited to be taking it to that medium. I kept the Fifth Beatle graphic novel short. As you can see, it's it's a pretty trim read, and I wanted you to be able to read the Fifth Beatle in one sitting. I kept thinking of the airport bookstore. I wanted you to see it in a bookstore at the airport and think, I could read this by the time my flight lands. So I did that very much on purpose, but I've been researching Brian's life for 25 years. So I have many more stories I could tell surrounding the life of Brian. And now that I have a 6-hour palette to tell that story, I think that's going to be, really allow me to expand on it. So it's in a lot of ways, it's a dream come true.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
This is an amazing book. It's unusual. It's something that you wouldn't expect to have garnered all the attention it's got.
Thank you very much.
And to get the support that it's gotten from everybody involved that you needed to get.
Yes, thank you very much.
So thank you so much for speaking.
Thank you for having me. And the only thing I will add, I know we didn't talk about this, but I always like to say it whenever we chat. I'm a huge Beatles fan, and certainly that's how I came to the Brian Epstein story. But the thing that wound up really inspiring me was his personal struggles. The fact that he was gay at a time where it was a felony, the fact that he was Jewish at a time of anti-Semitism, great anti-Semitism, and the fact that he was from Liverpool before it had any cultural significance. It made him the ultimate outsider. And while I've never had those kind of obstacles in my life, when I was a young kid, I'm a first-generation American. My family's originally from India, and I didn't want to do what was expected of me, to become a doctor or an engineer or study technology or join my family business and go into food products or financial securities. I wanted to write comic books, and I produced Broadway musicals, and those were my dreams. And when people were telling me, those dreams are silly, and people like you don't do things like that, I leaned back on the Brian Epstein story, and I was like, if that gay Jewish kid from Liverpool could bring the world the Beatles, then why couldn't this Indian kid from New York City write a comic book or put a punk rock album on a Broadway stage the way I did when I was a producer on American Idiot? Why couldn't I do it? So the Brian Epstein story taught me, if there's one message, I would say it's that no dream is too impossible and no person too unlikely to realize that dream. So I always like to make sure I get that out there, because I think that's the heart of the story.
Absolutely.
And that's really why I've dedicated so much of my life to telling it, is I'm hoping that it will inspire others in the same way.
Yeah.
So,
thanks.
Thank you so much.